Hello, this is Christina Mattis, and you are about to listen to a brief audio on Puritanism in colonial America, during which you will learn not only when the Puritanism thinking took place and who played some key roles, but also the overarching ideas and the ways of life during that time period. Even though you may listen to this audio as many times as you wish, I would highly suggest that you take notes so that you can easily reference this information during class discussion. And so Puritans and the colonial America primarily took place during 1600 through 1730. This was also a time that led to what was known as the Age of Reason, and that significantly influenced the economy and even the political decisions that were made. And so the Age of Reason, logic, logical, practical thinking. The religious thought and moral judgment of people essentially brought about the idea of Puritanism. And Puritanism was essentially a way of thinking by the Puritan people. And so Puritans, by definition, felt that the English Reformation, the changes going on in England at the time, had not gone far enough, hadn't made enough significant changes, and that the Church of England, which was in fact supposed to be separated from the Catholic Church, was still too closely associated with the Catholic Church. And so this group of people decided to form and identify themselves with various religious groups advocating this sense of purity, of worship, of doctrine. And so the Puritans adopted this further reformed idea of theology, of religion, and in the sense they were bringing on ideas presented by John Calvin. And I'll speak a bit more about John Calvin on the next slide. And so the key players were William Bradford, who presented the idea of Plymouth Plantation, and John Winthrop. He was the governor, and he essentially established this idea of pure religious movement. The Puritans, they were pure, and so John Calvin and his ideas of predestination were significantly influenced Bradford and Winthrop. And predestination, I will speak to more on the next slide. And so there were various beliefs going on. If we take a look in the top middle image right now, we see that there was an idea of innate depravity, the sense of moral corruption. People were from birth corrupted, and so with that, there was a sense of predestination. And so if we move to the right, clockwise, we see the sense that the Puritans believed you were predestined already, whether you were going to heaven or hell. God made that decision regardless of how good you were on earth during your life. If you were predestined to go to hell, you were going to hell. There was nothing that would change that. And so that thought, that frame of thinking of predestination came from John Calvin. Now, John Calvin was not listed as one of the key players in the Puritanism way of thinking simply because Calvin did not live during that time frame. Calvin, in fact, died in 1564, and so Puritanism began in 1600. So even though John Calvin was not alive during that time, his thinking did end up influencing Puritanism. If we keep moving down now clockwise to the bottom right corner, we see some images, and of symbols, and that was another belief from the Puritans, by the Puritans. They believed that God worked with them daily in all their daily events, whether it was working in the fields or going to the general store, and they constantly looked for symbols from God, whether it was bird formations or a rainbow. If we continue then moving left now, clockwise, we see a few images with people working together, collaborating. And that was another belief by the Puritans, effective business practice. Were you able to effectively establish business partnerships with those within your community? Another belief was the idea to separate yourself from any worldly pleasures, dancing, gluttony, feasting, shopping, spending money. Anything that was pleasurable was thought to be sinful, essentially, and so you had to separate yourself. The final belief was that education was possibly dangerous. And because education led to rational thinking, and the church believed that if there were more rational thinkers, the church could in fact lose its followers. And in fact, that's what was starting to happen. The way of life was also quite interesting and in ways a bit contradictory to their belief system. Marriage was very much accepted and promoted within the Puritan system, and in fact, here celebrations were allowed as long as it was something to do with the religious matter. Where education was believed to be dangerous, here the Puritans, in fact, did promote literacy, reading and writing, because literacy allowed people to read the Bible. And that form of education was acceptable, to learn from the Bible. All non-secular celebrations were banned. And at one point, even Christmas celebrations were banned within the Puritan lifestyle, but that ban was lifted. And so, but anything that had to do other than religious, non-secular, all those celebrations were banned. And finally, punishment. People, if they were accused of any wrongdoing, it's not like it's today where you are innocent until proven guilty. Yes, there may have been a trial during the Puritan time, but it was already assumed, believed that you were guilty regardless of what you were able to present in court. And so punishments often were public to cause humiliation, not only on yourself, but to your family, to humiliate your family of your so-called wrongdoing. And so people were generally put into the stocks. People may have been burned at the stake. Hangings were very common, and that was the way of life. Thank you for watching and listening to this video. I do hope that you have received a slightly more insight on Puritanism in colonial America, when it took place, who played some key roles, what the ideas were, and now what I would suggest doing is watching the movie entitled The Puritan Experience, Making of a New World. It definitely does a nice job depicting and demonstrating colonial America with Puritan beliefs. Thank you.